What's up, guys? Welcome back to Corey's Garage, brought to you by Reese Motorsports, home of the Franken-7 project car. Today was another one of those fun days where I was not able to get started on the car as early as possible, and then I was actually not sidetracked, but anyways, I got some stuff done though. Started off the day with the mailman had his arms full of boxes of car parts. It was like Christmas all over again. So in that group of boxes, I had my ignition coils and wires. I had my new lug nuts. I had my front calipers from Utah, my rear calipers from California, my little switch panel from China, and my throttle cable from California. So it was a pretty good day parts wise. Got a lot of stuff. Then forgot that we had an appointment this afternoon. On the way to that appointment, though, I did take my throwout bearing and whatever you call it, throwout bearing retainer sleeve bobber. Took that by the Levin tire, where I got the tires mounted and balanced last week for the Mustang wheels, and also where I had the rear subframe, the bushings pressed out. So that's kind of becoming my go-to place for pressing or things like that. So guys hooked me up there, dropped it off, went to our appointment, came back and picked it up. So no big deal, $26. So that was really cool. And then when I was able to start working on the car, put the new throttle bearing in, greased the shaft, put the starter on, transmission, got all that stuff lined back up, got the transmission mounted back to the engine, blue Loctited the bolts, torqued those to spec, and so that part is set. And then on the front of the engine, I did have to take the water pump back off to put the cam position sensor and its little wiring harness and bracket back on underneath the water pump. So, but that's been replaced and torqued back to spec. Then, oh, my intake came today. Thank goodness. So, yeah, so I got that. Before I put the transmission on, I took the intake and the transmission, put them outside, put them on a tarp, sprayed a bunch of, not PB Blaster, Purple Power degreaser, and just kind of scrubbed it off with a firm plastic brush I had, and poured a bunch of hot water on it to just kind of melt away some of the gunk, clean it up a little bit. The intake, you can't really tell any difference, but the transmission cleaned up pretty good. And so then I put the transmission back on and then dried the air intake out. And I was kind of puzzled on which intake gaskets to use. I've had these that I had for the Speedmaster. They're Fel Pro gaskets because the Speedmaster was all solid aluminum. So that's why I got these. But the LS6 Intake has its little, I guess not indents, but basically little provisions for individual gaskets per port. So thankfully, for some reason, one of the kits I got, I think it was the fuel rail kit, came with individual gaskets. So I lucked out there. So I just went ahead and put those in, covered in our super lube, and put the intake manifold on, and realized the hardware that I purchased for the Speedmaster was too short for the LS6, and vice versa. So PJ got my intake with the hardware that I could have used for this intake, and I got his intake and hardware that could have used for that intake. So anyways, I have to buy 10 more M8 by 1.25 bolts, I think 110 millimeter, and some washers. So I get to go do another parts run tomorrow, but thankfully not too bad. But I'm going to show you the engine real quick. I wish I could turn the camera around while I'm recording, but boom, it's starting to look like an engine again. So we've got our modified belt tensioner, which basically, like I showed you last night, was about as long as where this blue goes to. So I shaved it down to there, put a couple of washers in just to bring it back a little bit, and all the pulleys line up perfect. So that was a fun little project. So, and I put 2 matching bolts, or semi-matching. I put longer bolts in there. They don't match, but they're longer, so they're going to hold it. Similarly, with the alternator, I had some bolts that were just barely long enough to fit. So now I've got 2 good bolts in the little spacer washer deal that I found in my parts bin. So that's good. Here's the, if you can see it, this little bracket right here. This goes up to the cam position sensor or cam angle sensor, whatever. And so it's got a little plug right there. So I had to remove the water pump to put that on. And then as far as the intake, so I've had, these are eBay billet fuel rails. I was kind of questioning them when I first got them, just because I've only used, you know, OEM type fuel rails and crossovers and stuff. But so far, so good. These are 42-pound injector EV1, so something you would find on, you know, some Fords, and I ordered them under the LS1 search bar, or, you know, I typed LS1, you know, EV1 42-pound injectors, and that's what popped up. So I don't know why they're green. I don't know if that signifies they're ED5 compatible or not, but I already test fit them into the harness plugs and they fit fine. So we're going to go with it. We're going to send it. The fuel rails, again, I was kind of worried because the spouts where the injectors go in, it's like on this side they're kind of angled outward, and on the other side they're angled towards the back, but I guess that's just how they're designed. Because they pressed in fine. I used a little bit of, here's a little trick. Next time you got to put something in with, you know, an O-ring or some sort of gasket or something like that, get you a little can of, it's called Engine Store fogging oil. It's nothing special. It's just a simple, basic little oil. It just helps with getting O-rings and stuff like that to, you know, to slide in without binding up, without tearing. And it's something one of my old bosses swore by, and so ever since then, anytime, whoo, got an ant in my pants. Oh, I got several ants in here. So anytime I have to change like O-rings or injectors or whatever, I just give them a little squirt of this, rub it around. Also works for like if you have a stubborn intake tube or something, you're trying to get off a throttle body or whatever. Works really well with getting those on and off. So fogging oil, I got it at Napa, CRC. You may or may not find it with the rest of the spray stuff like WD-40 or whatever, but it doesn't dry out gaskets and stuff like WD-40 or PB Blaster could, so it's really, really good for rubber parts. So, pro tip! Anyways, so we got the injectors in, we got the little hold down brackets. It comes with two style of brackets to hold the rails down. I was kind of weary about putting those on, but I thought, well, it's cheap enough thin metal. I'll just send it and see what happens. If they, you know, if they bend or act weird, I'll know to not go that route. But they fit good. They fit fine. The injectors popped in the rails, and then I popped them in the intake, and no problem. Let's hope they, you know, we hope they'll hold. I also got my eBay cam or throttle position sensor and AIT sensor, air inlet temperature sensor. Got those installed. I got their O-rings lubed up, all that good stuff. So those are good. And I think that pretty much is it for the front end of the engine. Oh, got our little EGR block-off plate put in, because thankfully this is an 86 and it will not require emissions. So not even going to worry about it. The simpler the better. The only things I have questions on are, let's see, I have two ports on this intake. This one I think is the vacuum port I can use for the catch can, and then I can't remember what they said this one is for. I'll have to look it up again. It might even be, there might not even be anything in there, but anyways, have to check out that. But like I said, I don't have any hardware for the intake, so it is just loosely laid up there. But it fits in the grooves nice. I like that it actually fits in the grooves. I like that better than kind of guessing where if the gaskets are going to be in there or not. So I like that. But yeah, transmission's on. Everything's torqued to spec. Everything's lubed. Yeah, and then I got the brakes and lug nuts, things like that. So tomorrow, once my wife has got to run some errands in the morning, so when she gets back, I should be able to go and run. I got to get a tap. Oh, I found out this kind of sucked. So my little motor mounts right here, there's a hole that's got a threaded nut kind of welded inside there. So that is the only SAE standard thread on this thing. Everything else is metric, and this is a 7/16 by 1 bolt and nut. And so I was sticking in my M10 by 0.150, and it was close, but by the time it got to like cinch it up, it popped and backed out a couple of threads. and that really scared me because the last thing you want is your two main engine mount bolts to pop back. So yeah, so I'm gonna have to either get another tap and die set because mine is old and is missing some things, and it's all metric anyways. It needs to be SAE at least for that. You can buy individual taps. I may or may not. I guess I'll compare the price. But I do need to re-thread that and put a new bolt and make sure I put some good Loctite or something on there. Because that's actually the main bolt that holds the engine to the cradle. And then I may or may not put the, well, I can't put the shifter kit on yet until I get the shift striking rod thing or whatever from that Concept Z company. So that's supposed to be here, I think, Friday or Saturday. But I can get the transmission in. I can finish up the remaking the mount. I think I'm just going to lay the new one on top of the old one and just weld it and make one big, thick, super strong piece. And, you know, I was kind of thinking about, you know, of course, making the one I have like kind of a template, and then, you know, if I ever need to remake it again, just keep buying flat stock and maybe I could start selling them. But, you know, this Z32 transmission isn't as popular as others, so maybe if I see it starting to gain in popularity, I could start selling those or something. So I don't know. I'm not a fabricator, and but it was fun to make, and it would be fun to kind of remake version 2.0, but I didn't get to today. But let's see. Really, I think that's it. Yeah, so I just spent, I mean, this actually took several hours just to put all this together, and had to clean stuff and check stuff, and was playing around with these brackets and nuts and bolts. One thing is this crossover tube is way too tall, but I'm kind of scared to mess with the fittings here. I mean, it's just a wrench, obviously, probably a, what, 5/8 or something ends, but, or 17 millimeter, it looks like maybe. And I would like to cut it back about 3/4 of an inch, and that would make this sit a little flatter, but I don't know, we'll see. If it's a problem once it's on the car and like maybe the hood slams it down or something, I don't want that to be the problem. So I might cut it down at that point or make a new one, but I mean, that sits really far up there. But that's all right. But yeah, I'm glad to finally have the intake in. Glad to have this thing almost ready to sit in the car permanently. I hope I can reach all the connectors and stuff with the wiring. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting few days. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know if it's realistic or not to think, because, you know, I expect wiring to take a better part of a day, even though the engine harness, pretty much everything, just you lay it out and it bolts on. But as far as like what I can take off the old factory harness, I mean, I might just leave everything and just hook up what's still there, like hook up ground wires, leave the fuse panel, you know, maybe do my own sort of thing for the fuel pump since I have a little switch panel thing. I think that'll probably make the most sense. I do want to make like a battery disconnect and a, what do you call it, kill switch. So I still got to do those. But as far as like the mechanical nuts and bolts part, the only things left to do are to bolt down the intake manifold, put the brakes on, put the brake lines on, which are here. So the new rotors, new pads, new calipers, new lines. The coilover should be here, I think, Friday or Saturday. And then, yeah, the wiring. Again, there's a lot of stuff on this harness that, you know, is not going to be here anymore. Really, it's kind of like the stuff that's under the dash is the important stuff, but some of that is like wires or the wires. But some of that is like the headlights, the turn signals, the four-way flashers, the horn. You know, those electronics is what I want to keep, and I guess after all that stuff is hooked up, then maybe I can start cutting stuff out and maybe redo that little portion, but clean it up a little bit. But I want it to, you know, function as much off the factory stuff as it needs to, but I don't want to have anything there that it doesn't need. But I also don't want to like you know, mess myself up with, you know, having some cut or exposed open wires, or they short each other, and that causes an issue. But anyways, I'm starting to ramble. So hopefully we'll have more updates tomorrow. Hopefully I can get the, so my goals for tomorrow: intake bolts, bolt that down, tap set or tap for the engine mount holes, new bolts for that, put the engine in, finish the transmission mount 2.0, put the transmission in, and then start fitting up stuff like the, I might go ahead and do the, well, I can do the front brakes. I want to do them all at once. I guess that's stupid, but I want to do it all at once just to make sure I don't forget anything. Not, you know, I don't want to half-ass it. I still have like a cool air intake to test fit, and I still have the catch can to put in there, and I still have the radiator to see if that's going to fit. I hope it does. That'd be really nice. Or if I didn't have to trim it too much, or just minor alterations, that'd be really good. And then, yeah, then we'll have to do some custom hoses, and that'll pretty much be it. I ordered some fittings online for the to finish up the fuel system. So I got to make a fuel line just from the filter regulator up here to this rail. And then the fuel system will be done, at least for now. I think I'm going to straight wire, or, you know, wire it to that switch. Obviously, I don't think, I don't know if it's going to work with the key, but we'll see. So probably, yeah, I guess fuel pump on, probably battery on, ignition on. I'm trying to remember how I had the first one. I think it was like ignition and fuel pump and then start. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, sorry. I'm starting to ramble and I'm getting tired. So anyways, everyone have a great night. I just took a few pictures of this stuff. I'll put it on Facebook. I mean, for those who follow, I appreciate it very much. And we did get a new subscriber, if I didn't share earlier. So we're up to 20 now. So, you know, I don't know. I don't expect this to ever get to be a big thing. It'd be cool if it did. But that was not my intention anyways. It was just to kind of, really, it was just to kind of document this build and stay motivated. And I was hoping I would get more comments and more likes and shares and stuff like that. Not to get any money, but, you know, just to see that people were interested. But if not, that's all right. At least I can go back and watch these videos too. So anyways, everyone have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Burn rubber, not your soul.